we set out for an investigative mission in Turkey to uncover Turkey's pivotal role in Syria's insurgency.
Turkish intelligence agency has now accused our correspondent Serena Shim of being a spy. Now, Serena, are you a spy?
No, not at all. And I'm very surprised at this accusation.
Our correspondent, Serena Shim, has been killed near the Turkey-Syria border.
Serena Ali Shim was born on October 10, 1985, to Judith and Ali Shim near Dearborn, Michigan. She attended Clarenceville High School in Livonia, Michigan. Around 2004, Shim became a student at the American University of Science and Technology in Beirut, Lebanon, where she studied international affairs. She moved to a Beirut suburb called Burj Al Barajna to live near her father, as her parents had recently divorced. It was during the 2006 Lebanon War that Serena Shim became interested in journalism. The war began on July 12th, when the militant Shia Islamist group known as Hezbollah conducted a cross-border raid on Israeli soldiers. The raid resulted in the deaths of 3 Israeli soldiers, and 2 more were kidnapped by Hezbollah. The group demanded the release of 4 Lebanese prisoners from Israel in exchange for their hostages, after diplomatic relations had broken down. Israel saw the raid as an act of war, blaming the Lebanese government for the attack, and a bloody 34-day conflict ensued. Israeli Defense Forces conducted a bombing campaign on Hezbollah military targets and on Lebanese civil infrastructure. Serena Shim's town of Burj Al Barajna was devastated by the bombings. Over 1,000 Lebanese civilians were killed during the war, including hundreds of children. 44 Israeli civilians were killed in the conflict. Serena Shim began to question much of the news coverage of the war, which she believed downplayed the enormous disparity in civilian casualties. Her mother told reporters she saw that the war wasn't being reported truthfully. A year later, Serena Shim was hired to host a news show on the newly founded Press TV. Press TV is a division of the state-sponsored news network of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Throughout the next several years, Serena Shim's career flourished. Around 2010, she married Ibrahim Shim, and soon after had 2 children, Ali and Ajmal. The family lived in Beirut, where Shim worked at Press TV's Beirut bureau as a freelance correspondent. By 2011, war had come once again to Shim's neighboring country of Syria. While most international media coverage labeled the conflict as a civil war, over time Shim and other independent journalists exposed the fact that most of the opposition groups were supported and funded by foreign nations. These nations included the neighboring Turkey and their ally, the United States, who openly opposed the rule of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The Turkish government's formerly friendly relationship with Assad's government in Syria began to break down. In 2012, Serena Shim produced an investigative report from inside Turkey, examining the government's financial and logistical support for militant rebel groups entering Syria against the wishes of Turkish citizens.
The Turkish government has been a key player for Western countries to execute their plots against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Turkey made it happen by opening its borders with Syria to the anti-Bashar militant groups, widely known in the West as the Free Syrian Army. It has not only funded the militants, but it has also supplied them with weapons and equipment inside its territory before entering Syria. In this edition of In Focus, we set out for an investigative mission in Turkey to uncover Turkey's pivotal role in Syria's insurgency. The borders remain unpatrolled as foreign-backed militants import and export weapons freely. As I was able to approach one of the border crossings named Bab al-Hawa, I encountered an estimated 300 semi-trucks on the border, awaiting militants to empty them out.
ما في عسكر. العسكر واقف بالكرفول بالمخفر بس أما يروح هكذا أما يعين مغمض عيونه وما يلق له شيء. ما يروح ويفوتش كيف أبد الناس من أبده ما يروح ويجي لكيفه وما حد ما يقول له شيء.
Sources say when weaponry arrives, it is given to 2 American and 1 Mexican man. will either distribute them among refugee camps or across the border into Syria. Turkish military officials ensure the weapons are transferred swiftly and discreetly to Syria. President Bashar al-Assad has blamed the Turkish government specifically for the uproar inside Syria.
This is Erdogan. I think he believes that if Muslim Brotherhood take over in the region, and especially in Syria, he can guarantee his political future. This is one reason. The other reason, personally, he thinks that he's the new Sultan of the Ottoman, and he can control the region as it was during the Ottoman Empire.
The camp that holds some turned insurgent former Syrian army generals is in the Turkish town of Apaydin. My producer was able to get a hold of one of the generals living inside the camp. After a relationship was established with money involved, he offered to give us pictures of the weapons inside, thus admitting that the camps are not for civilian refugees, exactly what they've been trying to conceal from the public. A Turkish journalist was able to discover one of the hidden military camps in the Turkish city of Çakoli. The Çakoli camp alone holds 7,500 armed men. This particular camp lays right on the border of Syria and Turkey. So when the story was reported, the militants were quick to take their weapons and place them 1 meter inside Syria.
Duyum şeklinde Katar, Suudi Arabistan ve Türkiye'nin tedarikçiliğiyle sağlandığı, ancak tam olarak nereden geldiğini ancak bir tanık biriyle görüşmüştüm ben. Libya'dan geldiği söylenen, Krashenkov'a benzeyen ama Krashenkov olmayan var.
Upon arrival, Mr. Demis had informed me he had over 20 warrants for his arrest, one of them being a 10-year jail sentence for speaking out against the Turkish government. Mr. Demis was also able to supply me with pictures of some of the insurgents inside the camps. The pictures revealed that not all of the insurgents fighting in the so-called Syrian uprising are Syrian, but in fact, mercenaries from various countries sent into Syria via Turkey. Local residents are now filled with dissent as armed insurgents have moved out of border towns into the cities, where crimes such as theft have recently risen. Store owners informed me insurgents would openly and freely steal from their shops. Restaurant owners also complained of insurgents eating and ignoring to pick up the bill. When asked for money, they would say they were guests of the Turkish Prime Minister, Erdogan.
كثير معلومات انه عم تروح لهم اسلحه من هنا كمان، من هنا عم تروح لهم اسلحه علشان يحاربوا ضد الاسد. نحن ما بدنا هالشيء، نحن ما بدنا هون شعب مسلح. نحن عايشين من سنين وايام بهدوء وبسكون. ما بدنا تنخرب، نحن مزاجنا ما يعني مو عايزين ينخرب. هلا الدولة عم تشجعهم.
The residents of Hatay stood side by side to push back the insurgents by conducting demonstrations.
Duyum şeklinde Katar, Suudi Arabistan ve Türkiye'nin tedarikçiliğiyle sağlandığı, ancak tam olarak nereden geldiğini
İkincisi Filistin davasından destek. شيء لا تدعم القضية الفلسطينية.
Üçüncüsü İran'la ilişkileri.
ثالث شيء اقطاع علاقاتك مع إيران.
Dördüncüsü Müslüman kardeşlerin meclise girmesine izin ver.
رابعا السماح.
Analysts believe the reason Turkey is playing such a dangerous and crucial interfering role in the Syrian conflict is to fulfill U.S. and Israeli demands. Since the U.S. is under pressure for its record in Afghanistan and Iraq, it has no other way but to involve Turkey in the new military action. Many are also of the opinion that by weakening its neighbor, Turkey is trying to revive the glory of the Ottoman Empire. I have been your host, Serena Shim. Thank you for watching this edition of In Focus.
In late 2012, Serena Shim asked Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan a question about these issues at a press conference. She said he became angry, shouted at her, and demanded she be removed from the room. After covering the anti-establishment Gezi Park protests in Turkey in 2013, Serena Shim moved on to different foreign assignments, reporting from both Iraq and Ukraine over the next year. The war in Syria remained ongoing, and over the next year, a new threat emerged in the region. the rise of a Salafi jihadist terror group known as the Islamic State. The group, also called ISIS, ISIL, or Daesh, was uniformly condemned by most national governments, including Syria, Iran, Lebanon, the United States, and Turkey. In September 2014, the Islamic State began a campaign to invade the city of Kobani in northern Syria near the Turkish border. Serena Shim felt compelled to report on the story, telling her mother via text message, "I feel like I need to go to the Turkey-Syria border ASAP. I have to cover the conflict there." Shim planned this to be her last foreign trip, as she had been quietly making plans to move back to Michigan with her family. "This is my last trip and I'm done," she told her mother in a voice message, "because after that, there's nothing else that I can do, and I want to go out with a bang." A few days after arriving in Turkey, Serena Shim learned that Turkish intelligence was inquiring about her location and had accused her of being a spy. On October 17th, she appeared on a Press TV broadcast to discuss the allegations.
Now, Serena, are you a spy?
No, not at all. And I'm very surprised at this accusation. I've even thought of actually approaching Turkish intelligence, and because I have nothing to hide and I've never done anything aside from my job, and I'd like to make that apparent to them. However, I am a bit worried because, as you know, and as the viewers know, that Turkey has been labeled by Reporters Without Borders as the largest prison for journalists. So I am a bit frightened about what they might use against me. We were some of the first people on the ground, if not the first people, to get that story of those Takfiri militants going in through the Turkish border from the Bab al-Hawa Rihanli border being sent in. I got images of them in World Food Organization trucks. It was very apparent that they were Takfiri militants by their beards and by the clothes that they wore, and they were going in there with NGO trucks. And I just find it very odd. They went to several local residents here, asked about me. The residents said, "No, we know her. We have seen her before. We've seen her work. She's not a spy." And they were blatant on going through with the fact that, no, yes, I actually am. And that they told any people that if they see me to bring me in or to give them a phone call. So I find it odd. I don't see why they're taking this action against me at this point, but I have spoken with a lawyer as of late, because if they do take me in, I do want to be ready, and I want to be able to, see where we can take this case legally.
This would be Serena Shim's last broadcast. 2 days later, she rode in the passenger seat of a rental car driven by her cousin, Judy Irish, in the Turkish town of Suruç, when their car collided with a large truck.
Very sad breaking news for all of us here at Press TV. Our correspondent, Serena Shim, has been killed near the Turkey-Syria border. Serena was killed in a reported car accident when she was returning from a report scene in the city of Suruç in Turkey's Urfa province. She was going back to her hotel when their car collided with a heavy vehicle. Urfa province is near the Syrian border.
Kaza akşam saatlerinde ilçeye bağlı Aligöl mahallesinde meydana geldi. İddiaya göre İran'dan yayın yapan Press TV muhabiri Serena Shim ve kameraman Judy Irish'in içinde bulunduğu kiralık otomobil beton mikseriyle çarpıştı. Kazada İran asıllı Amerikan vatandaşı Serena Shim olay yerinde hayatını kaybetti. Kameramanı Judy Irish ise yaralandı. Shim ile Irish'in bir süreden bu yana Kobani'deki gelişmeleri izlemek üzere Suruç'ta bulundukları öğrenildi. Kimliği açıklanmayan beton mikseri sürücüsü ise gözaltına alındı.
Upon initial reports of her death, Shim's colleagues, friends, and family were immediately suspicious of the Turkish government, who had accused her of espionage and made veiled threats only days before. Serena Shim's sister Fatma later told RT about the contradictory stories coming out of Turkey immediately following the crash.
There's so many different stories. The first story was that Serena's car was hit by a heavy vehicle, who proceeded to keep on driving. They could not find the vehicle, nor could they find the driver. 2 days later, surprisingly, they had found the vehicle and the driver and had pictures of the car, of the heavy vehicle. hitting my sister's car. Every day coming out with new pictures of the different degrees of damages that have happened to the car. Serena and my cousin, who was the driver of the car, were taken to 2 different hospitals. She was reported first dead at the scene, then coming out with later reports that she passed away at the hospital 30 minutes later from heart failure. It's just very confusing.
Serena was reporting from the Turkish border near Kobani. She said the accusations might be due to her coverage of Turkey's stance on ISIL's atrocities in Kobani and the recent protests in Turkey.
Kurdish fighters have appealed to fellow Kurds in Iraq to send reinforcements as Turkey refuses to allow Kurds to cross the border and join them in defending the city. Eyewitness reports say the ISIL terrorists keep beheading, raping, and torturing civilians. This man, who just came from Kobani, has witnessed the accounts firsthand.
They believe if they butcher a Kurd, they will go to heaven. This is all because of Turkey.
Kurds here have made several attempts to try and take in humanitarian aid to the besieged city of Kobani, but the Turkish army is lined up across the border, not letting anyone in. They also warn to shoot any people who attempt to go further.
Well, joining us now from studios in Tehran is Press TV's newsroom director Hamid Reza Imadi. Mr. Imadi, you have worked with Serena over the years. What are your initial reactions?
It was a sad day for Press TV, for the international community, for journalists, for everyone who wants to get the truth out of the situation that is going on in this part of the world. Just put 2 and 2 together, Fatima. You can see Serena being live on Press TV, talking about how she was accused of spying for the anti-Ankara opposition. And then after just 2 days, she gets killed in a car accident. This is 21st century. Nobody buys that kind of childish, infantile argument on the part of Turkey, that the correspondent who has criticized Turkey for such a long time has died in a car accident. We're not gonna buy that, and nobody in his or her sound mind would buy that argument. We believe that the Turkish government has to be held responsible.
Imadi's comments prompted a response from Izzettin Küçük, governor of Şanlıurfa province in Turkey. He said, "The allegations are completely untrue. These are efforts designed to put Turkey in a difficult position. When the investigation is completed, we will make a statement." Though Serena Shim was an American citizen, the U.S. government showed little interest in pursuing justice for her case.
Do you agree with the
last one, and then I'm moving
notion
on.
that Turkey is becoming more authoritarian lately?
I don't think I have anything for you on that. Yes.
Does the U.S. have any comment on reports of the death of U.S. citizen Serena Shim in Turkey, maybe more than just a car crash, following her reports that ISIS militants are being smuggled across the Syrian border?
Yes, we can confirm that she died in Turkey on October 19th and extend our deepest condolences to her family and friends. Officials from the U.S. Consulate General in Adana are in contact with her family and providing all possible consular assistance. For any details or information about the investigation, I think local authorities in Turkey are handling that.
The question was whether you believe that her death had anything other than to do than a car crash.
I just don't have anything further for you then.
Can you take the question?
I can, but I don't think I'm going to have anything for you.
The U.S. government at the time was aggressively pursuing the removal of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and considered Turkey a vital partner in this campaign. In State Department briefings around that time, questions were being asked about both countries providing funding and support for anti-Assad rebel groups with ties to ISIS.
Was it, in retrospect, a bad policy or a failed policy to arm any of the Syrian rebel groups, seeing how most of them have morphed into ISIS?
I think you just said a couple of things in that statement that aren't true. I would not say most of them have morphed into ISIS. The Syrian moderate opposition that we work with is very opposed to ISIS, certainly. So our support for them is a very important part of our strategy here.
Who are these groups that are moderate?
Well, primarily we work with the FSA, as you know, on the political side with the SOC. These are groups leading moderate opposition forces in Syria right now. They've been continuing to grow, continuing to coalesce. They have very significant challenges on the ground, but think you're well aware of who these guys are.
You agree that your allies, whether from the Gulf Cooperation Council or Turkey, have basically armed and financed and equipped and allowed fighters to go through the borders that morphed into ISIS?
Well, as we've said for a very long time, we have not had evidence that any country or government was supporting ISIS. That's been very long-standing line from this podium. We know there are challenges in the region with financing, with foreign fighters. We know countries believe they need to do more, and it's not a challenge that any of us can do on our own, and they certainly feel the same way.
Serena Shim's body was returned to Burj Al Barajna, where her funeral was held on October 22nd. Upon seeing Shim's body, her mother reported that there was not a scratch on her. The next day, Turkish authorities concluded that Judy Irish was solely responsible for the accident. Their report cited the statement of the alleged driver of the cement truck, Suruç Salan. He said, "A car traveling at a very high speed went out of control, entered my lane, and came under my truck." Judy Irish told a very different story of the crash. In a statement published 2 years later, she said, "I was driving on a 3-lane, one-way highway in the fast lane. I could see the semi-truck that was behind me in the middle lane, and he was going very quickly, and he sped up in front of me and cut me off, making me crash into him."
Yes, thank you. It's about the journalist Serena Shim, who died in Turkey under very suspicious circumstances. Did her death raise suspicions here at the State Department?
Well, I think we've spoken to this in the briefing room several weeks ago after it happened. I don't have anything to add to what the spokesperson said at the time, though.
But then she died several days after she claimed she had been threatened by the Turkish intelligence. Have you inquired about this? Have you asked questions? Is there really nothing new about this?
Well, I just don't have any update to share with you. Again, this was raised shortly after her death. The spokesperson addressed it. I don't have an update to share with you at this time.
Taking their cue from the State Department, the U.S. national media mostly ignored the story of an American citizen killed in suspicious circumstances abroad, when normally such a story would be covered extensively.
RT has obtained Serena's personal message to her mother. It was one of her final recordings.
Being killed is scary, Mom. Going to jail is not scary. It sucks, but it's not scary.
The exact circumstances of Serena's death are still unknown. They may never be known, and one of the concerns is that the U.S. may not be very eager to press on with any meaningful investigation into what happened to Serena Shim in order not to hurt relations with Turkey.
Fatima, our condolences. Thank you for coming on the show. Is it your view that Turkish intelligence was involved in the death of your sister?
Yes, I would have to say yes, 100%. Any organization or nation that has a relationship with ISIS is responsible for the murder of my sister.
How's the other media organisations been reporting what happened to her? Has this story been covered at all by anybody else?
Certainly there were a few press reports, but nothing like the kind of reporting about a brave young journalist that one would expect. Was this because the story she was covering was so dangerous that a NATO ally like Turkey should be cooperating with ISIS? Was that the reason that this story has not been more widely broadcast? We don't know.
On Christmas Day of 2014, Turkish news reported that the local public prosecutor filed an indictment against the driver of the truck, Suruç Salan. Despite 2 earlier official reports that he was not at fault, the Suruç Public Prosecutor Office was now pursuing charges of manslaughter against him, carrying a maximum penalty of 6 years. The first hearing for the trial was scheduled for March 2015. No trial ever took place. Eventually, Christina Corbin of Fox News picked up the story, interviewing Shim's mother and her cousin who drove the car. When asked for comment, the U.S. State Department said it does not conduct investigations into deaths overseas. We do closely monitor all foreign government law enforcement's investigations into deaths of U.S. citizens overseas, a State Department official said. In 2017, the Arab American National Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, dedicated an exhibit to honor Serena Shim.
This display in Dearborn, now a place they can go and celebrate her life.
It's almost like I can visit her grave, but in real life that she's taken her place in history.
They donated Serena's passport, TV credentials, and the iPad she did so much of her reporting from to the Arab American National Museum. They say that's what Serena would have wanted.
To this day, there has been no conclusive investigation into Serena Shim's death, and no further comment offered by the governments of Turkey, the US, or Iran. In the years following Shim's death, other journalists reported on the connections between the Turkish government and ISIS, aided by their ally, the United States. Many of these journalists within Turkey were imprisoned or threatened by Turkish intelligence, further fueling suspicions about their involvement in Shim's death. Serena Shim's loved ones are still seeking to resolve the many unanswered questions about her death. Why were there conflicting reports of the cause and time of Shim's death from Turkish authorities? Her autopsy has never been made public. Why was Serena Shim taken to a different hospital than her cousin, Judy Irish, who was injured in the crash? While Irish was taken to the nearest hospital in Suruç, Shim was taken to a hospital over 30 miles away in the city of Şanlıurfa. Shim's mother alleged that this was the same hospital reportedly used to treat wounded ISIS soldiers. Why was the driver of the truck, Şükrü Salan, charged with manslaughter by a public prosecutor after initially being cleared of wrongdoing by an official report? Why did the trial never take place? Why didn't the alleged photos of the crash released by the Turkish media match reports from Judy Irish and Serena Shim's mother? Irish claims that the photos show a different car than the one she was driving. Shim's mother reported that there was not a scratch on her daughter's body, despite the photos of devastating damage to the vehicle. Both women allege that the crash photos were staged. There are no images of the crash that include Judy Irish or Serena Shim. Despite the contradictory reports from Turkey, why was the US government uninterested in pursuing justice in the death of an American citizen abroad? If the State Department closely monitors foreign investigations into the deaths of US citizens, why didn't this one send up any red flags? Was the US government concerned that pressing the issue could jeopardize their alliance with Turkey and the efforts to remove Syrian President Bashar al-Assad? What happened to the incriminating evidence Serena Shim told her colleagues she had gathered 24 hours before her death?
Serena herself gave us a heads up just less than 24 hours before she was apparently killed on the road back home when she was leaving the area where she was reporting at and coming back to her family and to her children, while having with her evidence that implicates international agencies like the WHO for aiding and abating terrorist organizations that were wreaking havoc inside of Syria, apparently with the help of certain Turkish factions or certain Turkish security authorities. We still don't know the entire truth.
Was the death of Serena Shim the result of a tragic car accident with highly coincidental timing? Or was her death made to look like an accident by a government who wanted to silence her from telling the truth about ISIS? What do you think? Follow the links in the description to learn more and decide for yourself. Please leave your thoughts in the comments.